Boker Tov and welcome to the 2016 Homeschool Family Conference, and today we're going to talk about reading and writing from the very youngest ages, from your preschoolers who are learning their letter sounds all the way up through the high school and college levels. We're going to cover it all in this short time, so buckle your seatbelts, grab a pen to take notes. My name is Ann Elliott and I'm the creator and founder of homeschoolingtorah.com. At homeschoolingtorah.com, we believe that reading and writing is one of those subjects that follows the content levels I was talking about back on day one of our conference. If you didn't see that session, go back to the 4 character traits that your children need to succeed in homeschooling, and we will talk about these. We spend most of that time talking about character, and now today I'm going to talk a little bit more about skill, content, and communication. And then if you have older students, you may want to come back tomorrow, on Friday, to our seminar on the high school levels, where we will continue talking about these last 2 levels. Now, a lot of times we think that in order to be a good reader or a good writer, we can jump right up into the heaviest of books and the heaviest of concepts and just give them to our children and they should be able to catch on very quickly. But truly, this is one area, it doesn't really matter how old you are, you have to progress through the levels in the order that they are listed. If you skip a level, you're going to come up with a problem, and then we'll have it labeled as, a reading disability, or you name it, when actually all it is a gap. And so I would encourage you, if you have children who are older and are struggling with reading and writing, pay attention today to these earlier skills. If they have all of their skill areas, then they will quickly proceed to the content area and then later to the communication area, which is writing. Okay, so we're going to start with reading real quick. In our curriculum, we start by teaching the letter sounds. We do this from very young ages, and we just go through each letter of the English alphabet and we teach what the sound makes. We do that in our kindergarten beginner phonics level, and then we continue it in level 1. In level 1, we begin starting to put the letters together and to make words. Now, why is it important? We call this phonics. Phonics means sound, phonic, like a phonograph, if you are old enough to remember an old record player. And why is it important that our children learn these little building blocks? Well, I want to take you back to the language that I believe was probably the original language, and that is the language of Hebrew. Up here, well, let me show you on my board. I say, this is a verse from Psalm 19. It says, "The heavens declare the glory of God." The heavens declare, I have that written in English. And sometimes we forget that English is not the original language. I'm going to look at Hashemayim. This is heavens in Hebrew. I'm going to put it a little bit closer to you so you can see it. And in Hebrew we read this direction, and of course in English we read the other way. This says Hashemayim. Now, I can just memorize this. I'm learning Hebrew, but it's much easier if I can actually break this out, because Hebrew has roots, 3-letter roots, right there, Shemai and Shemai. Okay, this means the heavens, Ha-Shemai. This is a plural, so in ours, it would be like the letter S, so that we can see that there is more than one. So in Hebrew, every single one of these individual letters means something. And if you find out the meaning and put it together, you know that it means heavens. This is the original way that our Creator made the way our languages work, is that the letters individually mean something and then put together into a root word means something, and then has prefixes and suffixes, which also mean something, but it's also simpler to learn, because once you learn what the individual letters sound like and mean, and then what the prefixes and suffixes mean, then you can combine it and use it in a variety of ways. Now, this is Hebrew, and you say, yeah, but I'm not learning Hebrew, I'm learning English, and I struggle with all this phonics. I want to show you, I have a book here on Hebrew word pictures. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. The author is Dr. Frank Seekins. And in here he has a picture of how the letters of the alphabet in Hebrew have come down to us to be in English. So you can see the letter Aleph in the most original form, as being an ox. And then as it eventually comes down in our language is the letter A. And it does that for all of the letters, and it does it for all of the languages in the world, because as we know, Bible's history is true. And in Genesis 11, it tells us about the Tower of Babel and how God dispersed the nations all across the world and gave them each their own languages. So anyway, just as it works in Hebrew to take the letters and to take their individual sounds and meanings, add prefixes and suffixes, it works the same way in English. In the kindergarten level, we learn that that says ah, and we learn that this says t. And it's really cool because now we can combine it. We learn that this says and then our children learn that mat. And they didn't have to just memorize this one word. They can just switch that first sound. And now it says p, pat. And again, we don't have to do a whole new word. We can just switch the first sound, sat. And that's the basic premise behind how we learn to read. Eventually, we get into much longer words, and we learn that words are broken up into syllables. Heavens with prefixes and suffixes. Here's a prefix, declare. Once I learned that D is a suffix, I could learn that the other words use it, like determine, default, demolish, destroy. I can't think of any more. So we can take this concept, and this is often a sight word, although it does have good phonics behind it. We will wait until they're a little older. But we don't have very many sight words that we learn in our curriculum. Most everything is sounding it out, learning what the individual sounds make, and learning how to take rules of sounds, and knowing when to use them. So that way they can be applied anywhere. You don't have to just memorize 10,000 words like you would if as I interpret Chinese. It seems like that would be that way. I bet it's not. But instead you can learn principles that can be applied to many situations. All right, so what we do, we spend a lot of time in our curriculum doing flashcards. Just like we do in math, we want our kids to have this down automatically so that it becomes easy and fun. And our kids can learn flashcards. These are put out by a company. I've had these since my kids were a lot younger. And but we have flashcards for you to make for your kids that have the vowels one letter or one color and the consonants another. And we'll walk you through that so that you'll have a complete set of cards that you can work with your kids, help them really have a good fast recall of all of their phonic sounds. Then after they know the phonic sounds, they will practice blending them all together into words. Blending them, sa, can also be Sam, and so on. And we can just blend in a variety of ways. It's like if you tell your kids it's a hidden code. Anyone likes doing a code, and it takes practice. A lot of times we get discouraged if our kids don't catch on, but I really think it just takes practice over 3-4 months, and after that much time, not 3-4 days, then it becomes easier. Now, our curriculum for beginner, for level 1 of phonics, is divided up into many units. It looks like it could take several years to accomplish all of those units. And I want to encourage you to go at the speed of your child. Maybe your child needs several years to go through it, and that is okay. Several of my kids have taken 2 years to go through level 1 of phonics. I want you to know that you're normal, and that is okay. Other kids just fly through, and I think it's just a matter of readiness, and you can't determine that and guess that one child is going to be ready at a different age until you just work with them and see. If your child comes into our curriculum and it's already had some introduction to the phonic sounds, take them to about week 16. Give them a bit of a test and see how they do. And if they have it down pat, you can just skip those first 16 weeks and go right into the second half of our curriculum, where they're blending words that have letters like CH and SH and ING, and putting those together. We call those phonograms. We also believe in having our children hear the word that we are saying, and we call this dictation. We say a word or eventually a sentence to them. They hear it, they listen, maybe they repeat it back, and then they write it. And then we check to see if they are hearing us correctly, because a lot of phonics is hearing and learning to listen and retain information. So we will have them start with very short things like sat and mat and hat, and then eventually get into several words together and then into long things. If your children are going along quickly though, don't think that one unit has to be an entire week. If your child has it down, you can kind of glance through the teacher's manual. We have it set up a little different than some of our other subjects. We don't have it set up as in day 1, day 2, day 3, but everything in a unit is put together in the same order each time so that you as a teacher can glance ahead, read through it and say, you know, my child already knows all of this. Maybe give them a brief test, but then if they know it, go on to the next unit. In fact, I would advise that you look over it before you start printing worksheets. However, some of the worksheets are really nice. I wanted to also mention that we have a sequence chart that gives you the list of what is taught. Sometimes though, you may just want to have your kids do all of the worksheets on their own time so that they get practice also in handwriting. It is good to teach handwriting at the same time as they are learning the phonics sounds, and here's why. As they are learning, let's say in this instance they're learning SH. On the first page we have them learning in manuscript because that way they can learn to read the letters that are in books and in all of signs and everything that's in our culture around us. But we also have them learning cursive. Cursive is good because cursive attaches the letters together in one word and allows your hand to quickly write a word without having to have a break. Let me show you on the whiteboard. If I write the letters SH with manuscript S, now I pick up my pen and I have to go down and I pick up my pen again. There, I've had to pick up my pen 3 times to write that. But if I write it in cursive, I'm only going to lift my pen at the end. So it's much faster and actually requires less energy of our hands. Either way is good. You can teach your children either. I do recommend both from a young age. If you want to wait on the cursive, just ignore those pages. And we have a cursive handwriting short unit that you can access on the copywork pages that will allow you to teach all of cursive in just a matter of a few short weeks. And if you're coming in at maybe 3rd or 4th grade. I like teaching it from a young age, and sometimes I do that other unit just for fun later to work on more of the penmanship abilities and making sure that it's neat and tidy. One of the things that's really nice though, and this is what I wanted to emphasize, as you're teaching phonics, have them say the sound of the phonogram as they write it. So whether they're doing it in manuscript or cursive, every single time they write it, they should be saying the sound. So I'm not saying SH here, I'm saying shh, and I'm saying shh, okay? In the earlier, let's say they're writing the letter E, every E, until they learn to write it and say it at the same time. And later, as they write an entire word, heavens, it's hard to do it on here, heavens, they're actually sounding it out as they write so that reading and writing are incorporated together. Now, one thing that is really important to do is to have your reading and your writing instruction in the same place in your house every day. You don't have to, as in it's a die-hard rule, but I really think it helps with children who are struggling to learn phonics, because everything about phonics is a left to right thing. If you have a child that struggles with the left to right brain connections, and we're going to talk about that later in another session about special needs and how to help kids with learning disabilities, but I think all children really do need to learn their left and their right. And the best way to do that is to always have them in the same place every day, so that everything in the room is in the same place every day. Your child will begin to orient himself or herself in the room, and it helps them learn to read. Now, eventually later, you'll maybe move to the couch, or you'll eventually move out into the world and they'll see signs, and they'll have to put that to the test. But I think when they're beginning to learn and everything is very shape-oriented, try to have them at the same time, in the same place every day. Be consistent. Be consistent in how you sound out things. Be consistent in the order in which you present the lessons. Be very structured about it so that the brain can more quickly learn all of the different concepts. Another thing that you're going to want to do is to keep things big. I love whiteboards because they keep things big. And when muscles are learning to do two things at once, they're not only learning to do the sounds, they're also learning to control a pen or a pencil. I do recommend a pencil for younger ages. And because there's two skills that you're learning right here at the same time, you'll see kids struggle. And you're not quite sure, are they actually struggling to learn the sounds or are they struggling to control a pen? If you're not sure, move it to something big. Even with younger children, it's fun to go outside and use sidewalk chalk or have them write in the sand or the dirt. Just really as big as you can. If they can get the concept big, then you know it's just a muscle thing. And you can slowly, over the years, get smaller and smaller. On our copywork page, we have a link to some handwriting papers that you can print, and they start with big spaces and they get smaller and smaller and smaller as the child learns to control the pen. But you can see how there's two different skills being learned here, and actually there are probably many more than just two. You can see this is a very complicated thing, one of the most complicated things that your child has had to do in their whole life. So be patient with them. Give them lots of practice day after day after day. Now, as they have learned all of their phonograms, all of their sounds that are listed in level 1, you're going to want to take them into level 2. Now, level 2 is complicated and hard. It says level 2, but it doesn't mean grade 2. It doesn't mean age 6 and 7. Your child might be able to do it at age 6 and 7, but not necessarily. Many times I don't find that kids are able to do it until they're in 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. Just because it just says level 2 because it's the next step. What we do is we teach how to read in syllables, and we have a little bit of an introduction to that in our first level, but not like we do then. I'm going to show you the word syllable. See, the problem with the English language, and I know you know this already, is that while it follows rules, those rules seem to go out the window as soon as we talk. I'm going to show you an example from the word syllable itself. Let's see. The word syllable has 3 syllables. I know that because my chin goes up 3 times. Syllable. So it has 3 syllables. My last name is Elliott. 3 syllables. Rejoice. Rejoice. The heavens declare. I count with my fingers. The heavens declare. 5 syllables in that phrase. So the word syllable itself has 3 syllables, and it's not very hard to sound them out, but if you try to spell them, you're going to have trouble, because we are going to learn in level 1 that a vowel that is at the end of a syllable, like this one is, always says its name. Syllable. I don't say syllable. And then here's this little E down here that doesn't seem to have a purpose, although we'll talk about it in the curriculum and why it's there. Why are there 2 L's here? Why is this a Y instead of an I? A lot of kids will spell it syllable. And the problem is that we have to go from being able to read and decode the letters to then being able to communicate them to others through spelling. Spelling is related to phonics, but it's its whole entire bird, and we cover the rules of spelling and how to listen and put things into syllables in level 2 of our phonics program, and we also have an entire spelling program. In the younger levels of our spelling program, levels 1 and 2, we are going to talk greatly about the phonics rules and how they apply to spelling. If your child doesn't know those rules, when they're maybe in 3rd or 4th grade, don't do level 3 and 4 of spelling. Go back to level 1 and 2 and do those. We may be able to do them quickly, but you don't have to go according to age and grades that are in the United States public schools. I want you to see that levels build upon each other, and if you don't have the skills at the early levels, you should not go down to the lower levels. There's just no need to. Your child isn't going to be harmed for life if they're in 3rd grade and doing level 2. It just means they're still working on those 2nd level of skills. And I have customers that are 14, 15 years old and never learned it, and they go back. And oftentimes the older kids will go through them much quicker. That's okay. One thing about spelling. There is no point in spending an entire week studying a word that you already know how to spell. On the first day of every week, I advise you give your children a pre-test. That means that you're going to give them all of their spelling words for the week. If they know how to spell them all, then skip that week and go to the next one. If they know how to spell all but 4, then those 4 spelling words become their words that they review for that week. The only exception would be in the earliest levels, and I tell you about this in the teacher's manual so you won't have to remember. In the earliest levels, when they are learning patterns, then let's say we are learning, like I showed you on, I'll show it to you again on this whiteboard, learning, so in the earliest levels, they're learning mat and sat and pat. You may want to have them copy all of those spelling words so that they can see the pattern. But as they get older and the words become feeling much more random, you will want to go ahead and just give them a pretest and only have them study the words that they actually have trouble on. No point in studying words that they already know. We also give you copy work and dictation exercises where they copy, you dictate to them. A lot of times in our spelling curriculum, they will copy a sentence throughout the week, and then at the end of the week, they will have it on their test to see if they can apply the spelling to actual life. So, we've learned how to sound out words. We're in the skill level. We are learning how to write them. We are learning how to copy things. We're learning how to listen and repeat it back. We're learning how to spell even when the words appear to break all spelling rules. We're going to learn patterns, and you can see where the skills are starting to build one upon another. Finally, we're going to get to the most difficult level, and oftentimes I wait for my kids to be 6th, 7th, or 8th grade to do this. And this is where we learn what the different prefixes and suffixes and root words actually mean. So, maybe we have this word, and maybe they can spell it, maybe they can pronounce it, maybe they can read it, but do they know what it means? And in this point, maybe they would learn that this means against, and maybe they learn that the root means law, and this part, the suffix, means a person. So an antinomian is a person who is against the law. So those are things that we learn in our vocabulary curriculum. We study Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, and Italian, and German, and French, and we go into all of the roots behind our English words, because English is quite a melting pot of many different languages. So we're going to study that and help our kids learn those important prefixes and suffixes and roots so that they can apply it to many other things. If you've ever watched the Spelling Bee, the National Spelling Bee, you'll see that the kids will ask the questions like, what is the etymology of the word? And can you pronounce it in 3 different ways? And, you know, that's the kind of stuff that we'll work on in the vocabulary curriculum. So we've got skill. Now we're starting to add content to what they know. They're adding a context and a meaning to everything. Back even when they're in level 2 and they're learning to pronounce syllables, we want to give context and meaning to what they do, and we have them read right from the scriptures. Although we have a special reader for you so that is broken up into syllables so that the kids get practice, but it's still the scriptures. So this is Psalm 1 from a reader that was written just for kids to learn on, and everything is broken out. That man hath perfect blessedness. And this is poetic, so everything will fit in our language. Who walketh not astray in counsel of ungodly men, nor stands in sinners' way. They can read it, they can copy it. These are fantastic. All of this is going to culminate into the best area of content that we can give you in our curriculum. The most important piece of content in everything that we learn in every single subject is going to be the Bible. We want our kids to know their scriptures really well by the time they graduate. In the book of Deuteronomy, it talks about the command for kings to hand copy the Torah and to keep a copy of that scroll with them when they go on their horse out to battle or they go in a trip, so that everywhere they go they are able to open the scroll that they wrote in their own hand and read it. And I think that there are two things I can see from that. First of all, we are raising up children who are going to be serving a king, the greatest king. We have princes and princesses in our house, and they should be copying the Torah in their own hand. But that's the second thing. When we copy something in our own hand and then read it again, we are using so many different brain pathways. We are learning it in a way that it cannot be duplicated in any other method. And that is why you will see on our website a tab called Copywork. Copywork is simply copying the scriptures. We merge it together with handwriting so that your children will learn to have good handwriting, as the scribes of Israel in the days past were very careful when they were copying, and if they made a mistake, they threw that scroll away. We want to teach our children to be careful when they're handling the Word of God, that they are incredibly accurate. As they are doing that handwriting, it will build stamina in their muscles. It will be feeding their hearts. It just has so many benefits that is the one subject that I would never leave out of your day if at all possible. Now, however, you want your kids to be writing in other subjects as well. For instance, we have writing assignments, and you can see again, I'm going into the content area now. Kids are getting older, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They have writing assignments in history and science, and in as they listen to you read a chapter book, maybe you want them to write and tell you, what did I hear? What did I learn about the characters? Maybe you'll have them read a book from the library. They can use the skills that they have been learning in the skill area to go into the content area and begin to communicate back to you what they have learned. Now, if you are sensing that they want to communicate and they don't have the handwriting skills yet, you can have them draw pictures. But of course, you're wanting to slowly go towards the way that they can communicate on their own. Maybe for a 3rd grader, you could have your child tell you what she wants the paper to say, and you could draw it or write a sentence or two on the bottom while the child writes a picture. But by 5th grade, your child should be able to write a paragraph underneath, and by high school, write an essay or even an entire research paper. So you can see that it's going to take stamina. And one of the great things about copywork is it builds that stamina, but then we can practice it little by little in journal writing, which we have in our writing prompts course, in history and in science, and in all others of the content areas. You can practice the skills that they are learning. If your child really struggles with the stamina and you want them to start to be able to get the content out and communicate it to you, then I would recommend learning to type. In fact, I think kids should learn to type anyway. We have a typing course. It's under our language arts tab. We have them typing scripture, proverbs, but also fun things like jokes and silly stories, important things that they need like life skills. That's a really great course. I recommend it especially for middle school age. Maybe a little younger even would be fine. As they get into high school, you might want to have them make a PowerPoint presentation. You might want to have them learn how to use Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel and all of these computer skills that they just need to have to be able to get a job and function in the world. Finally, the last subject is writing. Writing, I know in the public schools they emphasize, let's say in the core standards that they are trying to have adopted throughout our country, they really emphasize writing from a kindergarten and 1st grade level. The school of thought is that if a child starts writing from a very young age, they will be a good writer. I tend to disagree. I think that what we should work on is copying and listening when mom dictates a sentence and having them copy it. But for original ideas, I tend to go with having them draw a picture, because kids see in pictures, they're very concrete, and writing is really abstract, and I tend to wait until they're older. I think of it as a sponge, and as you fill the sponge with content, eventually it will become so full that you can't help but squeeze it out. But if the sponge is dry and there is no content in it, then there is nothing to squeeze out. When we learn to write, we learn to organize our thoughts. We have to organize them. We have to think of an audience that is going to be listening and how that audience is going to perceive and understand. And we have to tailor our writing for that audience. So in our writing curriculum, which is intended for middle school and high school, I would advise going through it at least twice, once at each of those age ranges. And we will learn to think of the audience, think of what you want to say, think of how you're going to organize it in a way that they will understand, think of how you'll wrap it up. We'll write short paragraphs and sentences, and then we'll go into longer essays and a variety of essays, persuasive writing and arguments and all of these things that will be needed in their lives. And then we go into a formal research paper and how to put all of this research and information down, how to cite sources and not plagiarize, and on and on. But you can see that this is very much a more advanced skill. So I don't think this is something we should be starting in first grade. So why do we even learn to read and to write? This is where we're going to conclude today. We learn to read and write because it says in Romans 10 that how will they hear without a preacher? And how will they preach unless they have been sent? And how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the gospel of good news. We have so much good news to share with our culture. Eyes are being opened to the truth, to the knowledge of Yeshua as Messiah, to the knowledge of His Torah as being beneficial and good for our lives. But how will people hear unless someone goes and preaches to them? So the most important thing we have for our children is to learn to be able to communicate the gospel with others. It starts with learning godly character, because you can't teach what you haven't learned. And then we build on it with skills. We add in content and in history and science, subjects that are commanded to be taught. We teach our children how to communicate with good writing, and then how to go out into the world and to reproduce themselves and to share the gospel, to make disciples, teaching them all things that He has commanded us to observe. So that's the purpose. If you have questions, send us an email. We'd love to help you out. If there is anything I can tell you today is to build slowly and carefully, consistently over many years. Don't be afraid if your child hits a stumbling block. It's going to be a long process, and it's the same way for you too. You can sit there and learn along with them. Shalom.